You always believed your children would be around, maybe not physically every day, but present, calling, checking in on you, being part of the small and big moments of life. After all, you raised them with love, gave them your best. But now the silence feels heavy. The dates go by, and your heart wonders, what happened to that closeness? This feeling isn't uncommon, and you're not alone. Many parents grow older, expecting a presence that, for various reasons, doesn't materialize. The distance may be geographical, emotional, or both. Sometimes there are unresolved conflicts. Other times it's just life, with its twists and turns. But the impact, the emptiness, the frustration, the sense of abandonment remains deeply real. It's hard to admit. Society expects resilience, and talking about the absence of your children can feel like a taboo. But here, in this space, we want to do things differently. This video isn't about blame or judgment. It's about acknowledging the pain you may have carried in silence and offering something new. Today, we want to walk with you on a journey of rebuilding. Let's gently reflect on what was lost, but more importantly, open the door to what can still be created: emotional autonomy, new connections, and a support network built on chosen love, not just blood, distance. It can sound like a harsh word when we're talking about our children, but it settles in slowly, almost always in silence. First, schedules become complicated, then the messages take longer to come until visits become rare or stop altogether. And you begin to realize that something has changed. The bond that once felt central in your life now seems peripheral in theirs. First and foremost, it's important to understand that distance from your children usually doesn't happen out of cruelty or indifference. It may be geographical, when physical distance creates barriers to being present, or it may be emotional, when they seem not really there, even if they're close by. In many cases, it's a bit of both. Adult life is full of demands: work, young children, responsibilities. There are also complex family histories with unspoken resentments or reversed roles. Many adult children feel overwhelmed, and some don't know how to reconnect. Others simply followed a path where parents were unintentionally placed in the background, not out of a lack of love, but out of distraction. And for those on the receiving end, that can hurt just as much as outright rejection. This is where silent frustration is born. You may have believed that raising your children with so much effort and love would be met with presence, care, and closeness in return. But reality doesn't always follow the script we imagined, and that gap between expectation and reality can bring sadness, resentment, and even guilt. The culture we live in reinforces that expectation. It tells us that children should take care of their parents, be present, give back. But in practice, it doesn't always happen that way. And when that reciprocity doesn't come, many parents feel not only the pain of absence, but also a sense of failure, as if they must have done something wrong. But what if, instead of blaming yourself, you could see this reality through a different lens? What if understanding the distance were the first step toward redefining your role, your worth, and your possibilities from here on out? After all, recognizing what's happening isn't giving up on your bond. It's simply making space for a new way forward, one that's more realistic, more compassionate, and perhaps even more freeing. The invisible pain of expectation. It's not always spoken out loud, but many parents, upon realizing their children have become distant, experience a kind of pain that goes beyond missing them. It's the pain of broken expectations. A wound that doesn't show up on any medical test, but settles in the heart like a silent grief. The grief for a relationship that didn't turn out the way it was imagined. When children are born, along with them come dreams, plans, silent promises. I'll be present. I'll give them love. We'll be close. Over the years, every act of care, every sacrifice carries a quiet hope that one day it will be recognized, that there will be reciprocity, that the love will come back. It's only natural to feel that way. We're human, and the love we give often longs for some kind of return, even if unconsciously. But time goes on, and when children grow up, they don't always follow the script. Some grow distant physically, others emotionally. And little by little, what once was a bond of affection becomes a waiting that never comes to fruition. The phone call that doesn't happen, the let's catch up that never materializes, the forgotten birthday, Christmas spent somewhere else, and there you are, trying to figure out where things got lost. This disconnect between what was hoped for and what is lived becomes a source of pain that's hard to name. Often it shows up as resentment, as sadness, as the exhaustion of trying to keep a bond alive that seems to exist only on one side. At other times, it turns into guilt. Did I fail as a mother? Was I too strict? Did I not love enough? These questions are heavy because they touch something deep, our identity. For many parents, a large part of their life story is tied to the role of caring, loving, giving. When that role finds no space for return, even symbolically, it can feel like the ground beneath us has disappeared. And here lies a delicate point. We're not always allowed to feel this pain. Society is quick to judge. It says it's selfish to expect anything from your children. That being a parent means giving without expecting. But is it really possible to love without craving connection, without wanting to be remembered, reached out to, valued? Maybe what's missing isn't detachment, but understanding. To realize that feeling this pain is not weakness, it's human, and naming it can be the beginning of a healing process. Because when we acknowledge the pain of unmet expectations, we stop blaming it and start caring for it. Yes, it is possible to transform that wound into strength, but first it needs to be seen with kindness, with honesty, with courage, and above all, with gentleness toward yourself. The power of rebuilding your support network. Life doesn't always give us the relationships we imagined, but that doesn't mean it can't offer us new ones. When children grow distant, whether by choice, circumstance, or limitation, it's natural to feel an emptiness. But that emptiness doesn't have to be permanent. It can become space for something new, the intentional building of a new support network. Many people believe that the most important emotional bonds are those tied by blood. It's what we're taught from a young age. Family comes first. You can only count on your own flesh and blood. But in reality, that's not always how it plays out. Sometimes it's outside the family where we find the most genuine support, the most attentive presence, the most compassionate listening. Rebuilding your support network is, above all, an act of freedom. It's recognizing that you still get to choose who you want to share your days with, your struggles, your joys, and that true connections aren't built on genetics. They're built on mutual care. That network can start small. A neighbor you have coffee with every Wednesday, a book club at the local library, a volunteer project, a dance class, a spiritual group. What matters is the quality of the exchange, the eyes that truly see you, the words that welcome you, the presence that doesn't judge. Many older adults have discovered, later in life, friendships deeper than the ones they tried to maintain out of duty. People who came into their lives through shared values, not obligation. People they can laugh with, talk to, or simply share a quiet moment. And that, in itself, can change everything. But it takes courage to take the first step. Courage to move out of the role of someone who only waits, and into the role of someone who also offers presence. Rebuilding a network means allowing yourself to be seen again. With your vulnerabilities, yes, but also with your wisdom, your life story, and the love you still have to give. Of course, this doesn't erase the longing to have your children close, but it widens the horizon. Instead of waiting for something that may never come, you begin to create day by day something that is within your reach, something that can grow and bloom. Rebuilding your support network is, at its core, a way to remind yourself that you still deserve to be surrounded by love, no matter where it comes from. And more importantly, it's a way to remind yourself that you still have so much to offer. Because true connection isn't based on obligation. It's based on choice. And yes, you can choose who will walk beside you from this moment forward. Cultivating emotional autonomy. There comes a moment when relationships change or fade that calls for turning inward. In the absence of your children, or any relationship that once held a central place in your life, an invitation arises to reconnect with yourself. And that reconnection begins with a quiet yet powerful kind of freedom, emotional autonomy. Emotional autonomy doesn't mean living in isolation. It doesn't mean shutting down or becoming cold. Quite the opposite. It's about learning to care for your own emotions with tenderness, recognizing that what we feel doesn't need to depend solely on someone's presence or absence. It's when we stop waiting for others to fill our inner spaces and start inhabiting those spaces ourselves with presence and self-love. In practical terms, this means creating small routines that help you reconnect with who you are. Not who you used to be as a parent, a worker, or a caregiver, but who you are today. A broader identity, one that goes beyond traditional family roles. Maybe it starts with a mindful walk, or the daily habit of writing down your feelings, unfiltered. It could be in rediscovering a long-forgotten passion, painting, reading, music, or in creating simple rituals, like preparing tea in the evening and allowing yourself to sit in silence, not as emptiness, but as rest. There are also therapeutic paths that can be incredibly helpful. Talking to someone who truly listens, whether a professional, a support group, or a spiritual companion. Meditation, for example, is a powerful practice for observing emotions without being consumed by them. It teaches us that pain doesn't have to paralyze us, and that joy can still arise, even on the most ordinary days. Emotional autonomy also means setting boundaries. It means recognizing that continuing to expect something from someone who can't or won't give it only leads to repeated hurt. It's not about cutting ties, but about loosening the invisible knots of emotional dependency. It's about no longer diminishing yourself to preserve a connection, and instead honoring your needs, even when others don't understand. And this doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, sometimes slow, sometimes uncomfortable, but deeply liberating, because instead of living based on what's missing, you begin to value what's already here and what can still be created. You begin to see that your own company is meaningful, that your time has value, that your affection can be offered to those who are open to receiving it, including yourself. Emotional autonomy is like strengthening the roots of a tree. Even when strong winds blow, it stands firm. Even when some leaves fall, it remains alive. And when spring comes, it blooms again, maybe in a different way, maybe more gently, but always with dignity. And it's with that quiet strength that you can move forward, making room for new beginnings, for new connections, for a life that isn't centered only on what was lost, but one that grows from everything you still have the power to create. Practical steps toward a fresh start. After acknowledging your pain, redefining your relationships, and strengthening your emotional autonomy, a practical question may arise. Now what? Knowing that you can rebuild a support network is a relief, but figuring out where to begin can feel overwhelming. That's why this chapter is a gentle invitation to take action. Starting over doesn't require grand gestures. More often, it begins with small choices. A good place to start is by looking around. What already exists in your community? Senior centers, cultural workshops, art classes, yoga or meditation groups, religious or spiritual gatherings, public libraries, volunteer opportunities. There are many spaces where meaningful connection can happen. It just needs to be nurtured. And if those spaces aren't accessible to you just yet, the beginning may be more personal. A phone call to someone you haven't spoken to in a while, a simple message to reconnect with an old friend, an invitation to take a walk in the park with a neighbor. Affection is often closer than we think. It just needs to be sparked by a small gesture. You can also explore opportunities that help you meet new people. Join online groups for older adults with shared interests, take online courses, volunteer at a local organization. All around, there are people also seeking real connections, waiting for a smile, a word, a presence. When you open yourself up, even if with some fear, things begin to shift. But it's important to remember, starting over doesn't mean replacing your children or pretending their absence doesn't hurt. It simply means not letting that pain become the only focus of your life. You deserve more than living in constant anticipation. You deserve presence, including your own. Along the way, celebrate each step forward, even the small ones. A light conversation with a stranger, a new place you visited, a day when you felt more alive. All of that matters because building new connections is an act of patience and kindness, and every step counts. There are many stories of new beginnings later in life. People who, in their later years, found joy in new friendships, the warmth of a welcoming group, the happiness of feeling included. Not out of obligation, but through genuine connection. And that has no age limit, no expiration date. You can be one of those stories. You can be the author of this new chapter. You can choose at your own pace what kind of presence you want to cultivate and who you'd like to walk beside. A fresh start is right there, knocking at your door. Sometimes timid, sometimes persistent. And it only needs one thing, your first step. Redefining the role of your children and rediscovering yourself. Throughout this video, we've walked together through a tender and vulnerable space. The distance from your children, the pain of unmet expectations, the silence that hurts. But we also explored something greater, the possibility of transforming that absence into a new beginning, of looking at yourself with more kindness, of building new bonds, freer, more genuine, more your own. Of course, the love for your children remains. It doesn't have to end, but it can find a new place within you. It can stop being the center of waiting and become a quiet affection, one that wishes them well, even from afar, one that understands boundaries without erasing yourself in the process. You are so much more than a mother or a father. You are a whole person with a story, desires, talents, pain, and joy that don't depend solely on someone else's presence to exist. And the more you reconnect with that truth, the freer you become, free to feel, to choose, to begin again. If something here touched your heart, know that it's a sign of life stirring within you, because recognizing pain is also an act of hope. Hope that there is still time, that there are still paths to take, that it is still possible to build love with others, with yourself, with the world. You are not alone, and your presence in this world continues to matter deeply,